Hey, welcome back to the Pomona Promise Network podcast. My name is Andrew Quinones. I'm your host today, April 18th, 2024. And in studio, we have guest Josh Swodeck. Oh, what's up, Josh?
How you doing, man?
It's good to see you. It's good to see you, too. So, I have you in studio specifically this week because you are an art commissioner, and we're going to talk a little bit about the City of Pomona's proclamation of it being like Art and Culture Month, right?
Yeah.
All right. So you and I met a number of years ago, but we spent 4 years together volunteering as art commissioners for the City of Pomona. I learned a lot while I was there, and I got involved in some really cool things that still keep me engaged today. You've been volunteering for almost about 8 years now, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, this is my 8th year, yeah.
Your 8th year of volunteering as a commissioner. I'm sure you've seen a lot of art. You've seen a lot of things happen over the years. When did you come to Pomona, by the way?
Let's see, 21 years ago we've been here.
Yeah, 21 years ago.
Yeah, I always remember because it's our 22nd anniversary coming up, my wife and I.
Cool.
And we came a year after we were married.
Totally, all right.
Yeah.
Why do you choose Pomona?
We were trying to find something that was close to work, but not too close.
Uh-huh.
And my brother was already in Pomona for a while.
Oh, cool.
Doing some work out here. And so, we kind of found a really cool spot.
Yeah.
And moved in. And to be honest, it took a couple of years to fill it out.
That's right.
And then, fell in love with the city, fell in love with the people.
So I remember you were actually living with small children, at least one small children, in the Arts Colony many years ago, right?
Yeah. So we had a loft that we lived in. It was in lofts. And then we had a gallery.
Yeah.
Right next door at the old M&M Electric Building.
That's cool, man.
Upstairs,
Yeah.
So for about 7 years we were there.
So you have been, ever since you've been at Pomona, you have been entrenched in arts and culture of Pomona.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool, man. So have you seen a big difference in this 20-year span of yours of going from Pomona as, it was an arts colony so many years ago, but it seems to be so much more now.
I don't know if I'd say more or less, but it's different.
Yeah.
I came in on the tail end of some of the old school guys,
right,
still being around.
Let's name some of the old school guys.
Father Bill, Juan Thorpe,
Bunny Gunner, right?
Yeah, Bunny Gunner. Joseph Todorovich,
yes.
A.S. Ashley,
yes.
Earns had loft beats upstairs for a while.
Yeah, that's right.
Andy Campagnon.
Yes, and she really helped with the Judy Chicago thing, and many years ago, and yes,
Chris. I mean,
Chris Tuvey,
Marcy, all the old school.
Right.
So I came in and got to kind of be a part. Father Bill.
Yes.
Got to be a part of all their lives, kind of as it was transitioning into another season.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when we started, the arts colony seemed to be a lot more focused on arts, but it certainly has grown with the clubs and the bars. There's definitely a nightlife down here in Pomona that's separate from the art component. But what do you think about, again, the growth of Pomona in the sense where you've had 2 kids, I believe, go through the SAY, and it seems like that we have planted the seed within our children to grow up in an arts colony and to help it flourish as an arts colony. Would you say that's...
Yeah, I think the young folks have always kind of been part of it. You think about the history of the Glass House.
Yes.
And while that was music, it also had a lot of visual arts attached to that. Stories of like a Juan Thorpe.
Yeah.
When he wasn't allowed to be in a gallery and he would go find walls to just hang stuff on.
Right.
Whatever, on vacant buildings. And so I always remember folks like Renee, who started Viva Pomona when he was like 14.
Yeah.
So like now we have little Victor and Rel, and folks like that who are now doing that. But that scene of like the youngsters like coming in and doing things way before, many probably thought they were supposed to. Has always been a part of the arts colony.
Right.
And
I know we both know the Tessiers and Ed Tessier, and from what I also remember, they really want to bring back that corner spot. I remember growing up for the most part being Taconazo, and there was poetry and food and music, but they're created something called The Haven, and from what I remember when hearing Ed talk is that that corner was very instrumental on youth culture back in those days, and is reviving it. Do you know anything about that corner spot?
Yeah, so the Haven was back before it was even called an arts colony.
Yeah.
And it was a little coffee shop, and I mean, folks like Beck, remember Beck, like would come and perform.
The musician Beck would perform?
Yeah, it was like this random little spot that
shit.
like LA folks would come in,
Yeah.
and then there was art to be hung.
Yeah.
I always kind of reference it as like the formalization of the arts colony.
Right.
Because before that, it was like, you know, you had Magoo and all these folks just like living in, unzoned.
Right. Yes.
Old buildings and warehouses, things like that. And so the Haven was the sort of formalization of that. And so it took Ed probably about 4 years of fighting with the city to get a designation of calling it an arts district, arts colony.
Wow.
And so it kind of came out of that. And then the business didn't do as well, but it was the hub that sort of created the beginning of all that. The DAW, has been around for 30-something years as well. And so you had all these things, but they were all very just like organic, and it wasn't part of some big art walk and Downtown Pomona Owners Association and all the things. It was just artists who were here creating things. Yeah.
And coming in during a time of maybe the word destitute, where things were, half the shops were shut down, so the rent was a little bit cheaper, and people could get away with a little bit more back in those days, right?
No, definitely. I mean, there's videos of Ashley and Ren, Richard Nunez, and all these folks doing fishing in we all call it Lake Pomona.
Yeah.
So when it would rain, they'd put socks on 2x4s, and they'd all go out and like do fly fishing to catch these 2x4s.
Yeah.
There's a video somewhere, I saw it one time, but I haven't been able to find it again. But of Ashley dropping like from a crane, a giant porta potty, I think full of glitter. And he crashed it, and it was a big mess. And that was his art installation for the day.
Yeah.
So you think of like days like that, or like them burning, sculptures in the middle of the street and parading them through the neighborhood.
Quema de Diablo with Rollo Castillo.
Rollo, yeah.
That's right.
And so, so those types of things have changed because, I mean, there's a little bit of formalization. There's some rules, things like that.
Rules.
We break them every once in a while, but, So, that was definitely like kind of, that was a little bit before my time, but like a little bit Wild Wild West.
Yes.
Folks kind of got to do what they wanted to do. It was also a lot of, a lot more gang activity downtown, things like that too. So you had this really interesting mix of like art and crime and grittiness and poverty and all of that sort of mixed.
And you can still find that at Characters Bar on First Street.
Yes.
That mixture, right? I'm glad that place hasn't changed.
Yeah.
You can still go in and it still feels like a bunch of characters. Yeah. So, many years ago, when I came into Pomona as a 18, 19-year-old, moving out of my house in Diamond Bar to Pomona, I got involved in the arts colony because I was taking an art class at Mount Sac. And I met Oscar Mayaganes, and we heard that they were renting out studio space at what we called the Opera Garage. And that was on Thomas Street. Now it's a club, the Carnival, I think it might be one of those clubs. And this was in the early 2000s. And we had such a blast. Ultimately, we had like 13 artists, mainly Chicano artists, but there was a few others. There were sculptors. There was somebody named Art that made these paper mache life-size characters like the Penguin or Batman, and a bunch of other characters. And we spent $300 to get a 500 square foot space in the Opera Garage with like 30-foot vaulted ceilings. And second Saturday Art Walk, this was in the beginning. We'd had bands up there, and it was a really fun time in my early to later 20s of years of just partying, hanging out with other artists, and having such a freedom. I mean, you could still crawl up on the roofs of some places and go under the basements of other places, and then seeing these characters doing these different things. It was a fun time, and it was a great way to get an arts colony started. So I really appreciate, I guess, the Tessiers, right, and Ed and someone for having the vision of designating this spot, this little piece of heaven on earth in Pomona, to have a focus on the arts.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Pomona's Promise Network podcast. Today's episode was brought to you with the support of the Southern California Service Corps at the Positive Pomona Production Studio in downtown Pomona.
We're back. My name is Andy Q, and I'm here with Josh, and we had a new guest come in, Tony Joe Zayas, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, what else do they call you, Tony Joe?
Rays of Zayas.
Rays of Zayas. In downtown Pomona Arts Colony at the 3P Studios, Positive Pomona Productions. And this is Andy Q. And this little podcast we put together is just to share information about the good things going on in Pomona. So today we're focusing on art and culture. Again, in our studio, we have two special guests. We got Josh and Tony. We have an artist and an art commissioner. And we're talking about art and culture in Pomona. And so where we left off last, we were going over a little bit of the history of the Pomona Arts Colony and what it is today. So Josh, right here to the left of me, as an art commissioner, he's been volunteering for the past 8 years and helping to really bring up our city in the sense of mural art and sculpture art and activities. And Josh, so what are some of the highlights over the last 8 years that you really feel proud of as an art commissioner that you really, I guess, brought to the table or helped to champion for the city of Pomona and arts?
I think one of the pieces I love the most is the Magoo tribute piece. Having East Little Streetscapers come out and honor Magoo. A lot of folks don't know that the mural's on Main at 2nd, but a lot of folks don't know that he had a studio a couple blocks up. You do.
Yes.
And so just kind of bringing that back. He's obviously well recognized in the Chicano art world.
So for those who may not know Magoo, can you give a little snapshot of who he was and what mark he left on in the world?
Yeah, so Gilbert Lujan, and he went by Magoo, lived here in the Arts Colony for quite a while, and then ended up going back towards LA, Boyle Heights area. He was part of what was called Los Four. There was 5, but they don't count the woman for some reason.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Órale.
I think she came in later, but they had already branded Los Four. But yeah, like Frank Romero, all those guys. And so, just a beautiful guy. I got to meet him a few times, know his family very well. Or not very well, but like in passing and stuff, but got to meet him a lot of times. And definitely was part of the colony.
Yeah.
And so that was a beautiful piece because we were talking about earlier, I really love storytelling. And so it's not just pretty pictures or cool art, but it's like, how do we connect the community? And so him being a part of the community, but then showing the significance that people forget about Pomona, that artists from here have really touched the whole world and really shifted what's happened. And so that was a really cool piece to sort of honor one of the pioneers of what art looks like on the West Coast. Especially cultural art.
Yes.
Things like that. So yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah,
it was. I got my little story with Magoo. When I was in my 20s here in the Arts Colony, he became a friend of mine, an older mentor, and he had a studio, and often I would show up, out of the blue. I'm walking down the street, and always there seemed to be like old cartoons playing, Popeye, and I'd go in, and he'd always ask if he'd want to have a session with me, and we'd talk about art and culture, and in his teaching position was at Cal State LA. Now, when I was in high school, I never got to do mecha or any of that kind of stuff. But hanging out with Magoo, I learned more about my culture and my roots from him, sitting on the couch with cartoons in the background, passing around the leño, than I ever did in any of the classes I took throughout my education. So he was a really cool guy. He not only inspired creativity in people, but he also taught a lot of history and gave people the context of where we came from. So shout out to Magoo wherever you are up there.
And also where we're going, right?
Yes, that's right.
The whole Aslan and Magulandia and all that was
that's right.
Really speaking to our future as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and the beauty of all of that is,
Yeah. So Tony Joe, thank you for walking into the studio. For those, we usually record this, but I made a little mistake and forgot my travel drive, so we're not recording today live through video. You're just hearing the audio version, but Tony Joe came in with a red shirt that says Graffiti the City. And he even got a matching hat. Check it out, Graffiti the City. And he's looking stylish. I don't know what's the new word that the kids use. He's got drip.
Oh, shoot.
I don't know.
I don't know if I
Some
got
of these
drip,
new
but
words.
yeah.
His fit is Riz.
But, yeah, right.
From the 50-year-old, right?
Right. Yeah. And we're all almost hitting 50, man. I'm closer to 50 than I was to 30. Shoot.
Yeah, man. I got this shirt the other night over at the Overspray art supply store. It's pretty fun. They were featuring a couple of artists, Man One and Saints. I guess this is their crew that they have together, Graffiti the City. So pretty dope. Just like to represent. But hey, I got to meet them both and had them both sign my art book and got to chat for a while and actually come to find out one of my friends knows their friend, and so we kind of had a really good conversation. It's pretty nice.
So now your art experience comes from the streets, right?
Pretty much, man. Pretty much. I mean, I grew up an artist as a young kid doing art my whole life. I think I've taken maybe one art class that I was lucky enough to get into in probably 5th or 6th grade when they noticed that there was, a little something going on there. But that was short-lived because that's when I lived with my dad on the East Coast. And shortly after I got, pulled back over here with my mom. And it was probably around 7th grade when one of my buddies noticed that I had good handwriting. And so he's like, yo, you're going to have to write my name and all of our other names and come up with this little style. And I kind of didn't know what I was doing at first, but then, as time started to progress, I started, okay, yeah, I know what's going on now. But yeah, I was the guy, I had the styles just kind of like naturally gifted with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I know you grew up a few different places, Azusa being one, but how long have you had roots here in Pomona?
I've been in Pomona almost 10 years now. Yeah, I guess I can say I'm a local.
Yeah.
I think it's official.
So what is your take on art in Pomona?
I think Pomona is pretty awesome for its cultural arts here. Out of most of the cities that I've been to in Southern California, growing up in Azusa, there's not a lot of murals there. Not a lot of art other than, your graffiti and your cholo art. I think now they're starting to pick up a little bit, but I know that Pomona has always been kind of a staple for the arts community. And that's something that's been very, very prominent, like my whole 10 years living here. And even growing up in different cities in Southern California, people would always talk about going to Pomona and even in graffiti days, coming to Pomona to hit the alleys and then making our way to LA and, all the different places. But Pomona was one of the main spots to come through. And if you're up in Pomona, it's a big deal.
Wow. Now that reminds me, Josh, I'm going to you speak on that, on this. At one point on First Street, between maybe Hamilton and Gary, there used to be a special spot for graffiti artists, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I want to say 20 years it was up, and I mean, guys from all over the world would pop into that and do it. For me, it's a little bit of a difficult story. When I first became a commissioner, our director from the city, Brad Johnson, I'll say his name out loud.
Yeah, he's no longer here, so
thank God. I told him this idea about trying to basically permit the wall so that it could be legit, and we rotate it sort of like the Venice graffiti walls.
Absolutely.
The STP kind of overlook, and so really wanted to do that. And instead of moving that forward, the week before he left, he went and threatened the property owner. And so since then, the wall's been gone. It's been painted over. And so it's something that I'd love to bring back. Fortunately, Brad didn't know about the alley. So the alley still got beautiful pieces.
Yes.
That Isaiah piece that is still up. I mean, there's a lot of just beauty in the alleys, unfortunately. And it used to be right by the train track, so you could see it when you were driving through.
So when people were riding that Metro or the Amtrak, I mean, literally for many, many, many years, decades, people went through Pomona and saw those community walls of that art. Yep. From all around the world, huh?
Yeah. So what's cool is, I mean, you were a part of this too, Andy. The work on the back end to work on our art and public places ordinances, to get to a place where we could do temporary murals, temporary mural permits, and then now we're looking at the ability to start doing rotating art. And so those concepts, I mean, it took 8 years to get through, but they're here, and that's one of the hard things with like.
I applied for it.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's one of the hard parts about like working with the city or something like that, because it just everything moves so slow sometimes. Even with good staff, because we have great staff now, but even with that, it's just so slow. I remember watching you. Hopefully, it's not a sore subject, but watching you go through the process to bring in like programming.
Yeah.
And we had never done programming through that fund, and you got the first one.
And I'm still in the process right now of the programming, and I'll share a little bit more on where we're at with that right now. But I'm looking at this I have my computer in front of me, and it's got this shell on it, and it's got a left brain and a right brain. And of course, the right brain, there's all these beautiful colors and abstract, and the left brain you got Einstein and EMC, and very mathematical. And so it seems like being an art commissioner and someone that has art perhaps within their heart, their spirit, and their soul, it can be very difficult to navigate the process between right brain and left brain thinkers, because I'm guessing city folk, when it comes to in particular risk management and things of that nature, these are very left brain people, and then you got a right brain person coming in trying to add a creative mix, right? So that's got to be one of the toughest things about being a commissioner, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, I guess I see it like learning a language, if that makes sense. I don't try to change left brainers from who they are.
Yeah,
I honor them in their gift of, because I mean we need both, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so I honor them in their gift, and I try to think like, okay, they're probably going to have a problem with this. Let me say it in a way that makes sense here, or let me do some work here to figure out what this would look. So I try to hand them things that instead of their defenses immediately going up because it just sounds crazy.
Yes.
Like how do we put it in a way as a team, but how do we put that in a way that walks risk management and different folks through something that's like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, we could do that. Oh yeah, the ordinance does say that. Let's, you know what I mean? And so it's a challenging process. I've gotten better at it over the years.
I think 8 years, you got some practice.
Yeah. At the beginning, I was just sort of like, let's do this. Like,
right.
And so now I've learned to say, try and figure out, like I've gotten way better at reading policy and stuff than I ever thought I would.
Yeah.
And figuring out, well, what does it actually say? And what can we do? And what parts do we need to change? And, and realizing that no doesn't mean no. It just means I have to fix something.
Yes.
And so that's the part where at the beginning we got a lot of no's.
A lot of no's, right?
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of staff turnover.
You had a lot of no's. You had lists, and but I still think about all that stuff of like coming in and like here's the 10 things I want to accomplish this year, and then you were lucky if you got one done.
Yeah.
But a lot of that's because we came in. Me too. We came in like real like excited. And so once we learned how to play the game, play their game, know where they were coming from, then it was different because now we can take these things and like. So I think of like those days from fast forwarding to you putting an application in for the programs.
Yeah.
Is night and day.
Oh yeah.
And so because you learned how to like speak the language to get something pushed through.
Right.
That got funding, support, the whole deal. Maybe a little support could be used, but a little more. But but yeah. So I mean, it definitely is a challenge to like I said, honor the other side.
Yes.
But then how do we formulate things?
And it makes me think about a good marriage in a sense.
Yeah.
My wife is somewhat opposite than I am. I'm guessing your two wives also add a different element.
Mine's
right?
Awesome.
Yeah, mine's too. Let's just get that out there in case they're listening. But like a good marriage, there's the opposites that attract and learn how to navigate, through harmony in life. So it's a beautiful thing. Now I got to tell you a little history from my past. When I was in my 20s, and I was in that art class, and I was also in the very beginning of my community work and gang intervention work. And I had been working with youth on probation, and I was a part of a leadership program called Leader, LDIR, and it was a really great program that I met with people all throughout LA County that were rising leaders within their own right. My little group came up with a project, and our project, since I was already working with youth on probation, mainly black and brown, there was a lot of violence and decades of violence between black and brown here in Pomona. And I went to Ganesha High School, and every year there seemed to be some type of racial riot.
Remember those days?
Yeah. And so I told the group that I was working with, how about we come to my city, and I'm already working with youth on probation. I'm already working with gang members from different cultural backgrounds. Perhaps we could do a mural together, bring these black kids and these brown kids together and find common ground, because I don't know any cholos out there that don't like Brent Wood or Smokey Robinson or some of these. And I don't know any black people in California that don't like tacos. The food and music, there was a lot of commonality that brings us together that separates us. So we wanted to do a mural that brought the youngsters together, that talked about our commonalities and put something right across the street from Ganesha High School at Kennedy Park. I was on fire. We had the money. We had an empty wall. We had professionals. However, we went to the city with the idea, and nothing was in place at that time for something like that to happen. And I got very discouraged. And I told myself one day, when I grow up, I want to be able to paint a mural within our own community that helps to address some of these issues. I don't know how I'm going to do it, because I didn't have any administrative skills at that time as a 21-year-old kid for the most part. But I was very fortunate to become a commissioner and help to learn about that policy and work with people like Josh and some of the great people within our city to help change things. So it didn't always have to be that way. Now, as a commissioner, Josh, you have seen the unfolding of a great deal of community art within this last, I want to say, year or two. Tell us a little bit about the AIPP and art in public places, and how do you feel that it has been unfolding by adding art and value to our community?
Well, I think it was written from a good place. For those who don't know, it's basically a 1% that all new development over $750,000 pay into the city for an art fund. And so it doesn't come out of the city's budget, anything like that. It all was coming in from new development. So it was a little slow there for a while too, because nobody really wanted to develop in Pomona. Right now it's growing quickly because of all the housing and all the different things. So there's a lot of new development happening. So because of that, there's a lot of funding coming in. So now we're trying to get this moving as fast as possible. But I think the importance really at the end of the day, that's just the funding structure of how to put the art out. And it did speak to kind of like what kind of art folks wanted. And I think at the beginning it was really focused in on permanent, mural pieces, sculpture, things like that. We didn't really do sculpture. We did a lot of murals because they're a little easier. Yeah. And most of those murals are still up today. Yes. Many, many years later. And so that was kind of the kind of where we were. Some of the parts that we were missing, I think, was the temporary art. Art just for the sake of art. And that really helped tell the story. And maybe that story changes in 6 months or a year or something like that, and being able to have things rotate. And a lot of that comes from the love of graffiti and all of that. And so that was every time if you painted over someone's piece, it always had to be better. You know what I mean? At least.
If not, then you're going to have some
problems.
Yeah,
exactly. And so, but the idea was that if it was better, then there was a respect and an honor, and there were certain ones you didn't touch, but for the most part, it was always moving, it was always growing, it was, the community was, and so that part I think was missing. And so that's the part that I get really excited about. Even though I love the stuff that's going to be here for 50, 60 years, I love those too. I really love the pieces that are going up that are just like from the heart. They're usually a little edgier, a little deeper, and so it allows for that space to happen. And then really moving into the programs, because what was happening is only folks who knew how to deal with the bidding system of the our RFPs and RFQs and stuff through the city were the only ones getting the funds. And that was really difficult, but a lot of our artists had no idea how to do any of that. And specifically our street artists and our younger artists that wasn't something they've ever been trained on. So moving away from the RFQ into a call for art, this last one we just did had a letter of intent. We didn't even ask for art. We just said, like, write a letter of, like, your idea.
And that's what Tony Joe did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, really get, like, how can we make this as easy as possible? And then if we like the idea, like, we have staff that can work you through that process. Like, but back in the day, if somebody, like, didn't fill out their application properly, it didn't even come to the commission.
Nope.
The city just was like, no, it wasn't filled out properly. Sorry, we're not even going to present it. And so that's the part that I feel like I love the formalization. I love the fact that we found funding. I love all of that. But right now we're in a space now where I feel like we're really getting the community. And that's the part where, you know, art's being used in all these cities for gentrification. So these murals are being put up everywhere. And then all the, you know, the rent is going up like crazy in the cool art neighborhoods. You know, I think of like LA's Arts District.
Yep.
You know, Ashley and some of those guys were the last ones who got kicked out.
Right.
Back in the day. And so, like, all the artists from down there were all evicted. And so they tripled the rates, brought everybody in after the murals were painted. And so that's the part we don't want to do. And so the temporary arts allow for us to be able to bring the community in. Right. And so the folks, the artists from the community, and trust me, I don't love every piece that goes up. Sometimes I'm like, but I love their heart. Like, I'll vote for someone who's got a good heart, right? Especially on a temporary one, because I'm like, we can paint over it in a year. But, like, I love that you're connecting. Like, you got to put, like, paint on a wall, you know, something like that.
I'm thinking of one right now at Ted Green Park that I think had a good intention, but it definitely was probably their first mural.
Yeah.
So I think two ways about it. I look back at myself as a 21-year-old that would have probably done a mural something like that, not as professional as I would have do it today. But it makes me feel good that somebody had an opportunity, right? Someone having an opportunity, and that one opportunity may increase their skills and take them to the next.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, my first murals were in the dark, and you were looking over with a hoodie on.
Right.
I was telling Justin over at Overspray, I was like, not until I got older did I even know how much spray paint can cost, because we didn't pay for that. Right. We made our own tips, like all the stuff. And so there is beauty in growth and, like, giving folks their first and second and third chances. And so it's not an either or. It's like, let's bring in the seasoned folks. We got to bring in Man One, who's been doing this for what, 20 something, 30 years almost, probably easily. Like. And so one of LA's greats. And we've had other folks and over the years that have come in, like East Los Streetscapers, being able to do that, you know, Wayne and David Botello, and
to see those older guys still. I mean, we're talking about like 70s, right? Still jumping on scaffolds and doing.
Well, we got them a team. We got them a team because it was a little bit different, and that's actually why if you look at the mural, you'll see bubbles. Yeah. Because we did like a mural page in the DAW. The DAW supported that and brought in a great team to work with them because they were so old. It would have been difficult to have them actually painting on the walls. Yeah. And so everything was painted in panels and then brought in and, like, put on the wall afterwards. And so being able to support those folks, you know, our seasoned artists, but then also supporting our first timers who walk into a commission meeting with like a sketch pad and like a bunch of doodles, and they're like, this is what I'm thinking. And you're like, I don't see it, but, like, I like your heart, so let's work on this a little bit.
Nice. That's awesome.
I really also enjoyed and appreciated the unveiling of the Magoo mural. Yeah. You remember that? I mean, you had the lowriders, you even had a Magoolandia lowrider there, and a little bit of music and kids and family. And that in particular, a day like that makes me feel proud about community art, you know, and think how many people come out here to celebrate. A painting on a wall, you know? Yeah. And children, all ages, every culture. I mean, we were really there to celebrate, right? That day?
Yeah. I mean, we had folks from, like, self-help and, I mean, all over, like, coming out and supporting and that day. That was a beautiful day. A lot of old school guys you got to meet and or see for a long time. I hadn't seen for a long time. That's awesome. So, yeah, it was really cool.
So now getting back a little bit to the present day, I was awarded a small contract with the AIPP to do one of the first programs, excuse me. And so I have been working with different artists from our community and a couple of youngsters that I've been mentoring. And we actually have 3 projects. It's a 6-month project we're working on. And we're about to start the first one. And it's going to be stencils on sidewalks at 7 of our parks. And these stencils reflect, a positive quote, something uplifting, with some artistic motifs that kind of frame it. We thought about this idea years ago in the sense where how many kids walk to school. And I just thought it'd be nice if kids were walking to school and they see something uplifting on the sidewalk. This doesn't have to be spray painted across a wall or anything for everyone to see. It's like a secret painting just for them. And so it made me feel really proud that I got a couple youngsters that I'm kind of mentoring and teaching them how to go through, the administrative part of how to go after a city contract. We did a little bit of budgeting. So me and this youngster, we went to Overspray this last week, and we started looking at the prices and the cans and how many do we need, what type of materials that we might need. This first project I'm working with an artist, Oscar Mayaganes. He's got years of working with stencils. And so we brought him to give a little expertise and to teach this youngster about, we taken him to show what laser cutting is, and we went to a makerspace. And so it's nice. The second project, we're working with Joe Dead at Ganesha Park, doing a little tribute to the Yellow Submarine theme. And this is going to be right next to the community pool and the playground. And the third project will be a little larger size mural on the restroom building, Philadelphia Park. And that's going to be with another Pomona-based artist, Jose Juarez, another professional that he gets paid to do art. That's his job for the most part. And so we have, and then Tony Joe, he'll be helping me with some stuff as well. So we have a couple of youngsters that are being mentored by professional older artists that are given some tips and tricks that might help them on their path of life of becoming a professional artist, or at least wanting to get some of their thoughts or ideas in the city, legitimized, through a contract in public art. So it's been fun. It's been a little challenging at times, but as a pilot project, I'm hoping that we have it somewhat some success, so that we could continue to do this. Now, I've always worked with, we don't call them at-risk kids anymore.
At Promise.
At Promise, we call them now. But I've always worked with those kids that maybe traditionally they hadn't done well in public education, maybe had gotten into a little trouble. So for me, being full circle, that I was in here working with the youth on probation 20 years ago and had an idea to bring black and brown kids together. Now to be able to be an adult, allowing something to come to fruition of working with these kids that maybe were not perfect in school, but giving them an opportunity to do something like this. So it's nice. And I thank the city for giving us this opportunity. And I hope we make you guys proud, in the end, by seeing some beautiful art and not only that, but I also think about spending that money within our own community. So I work here in Pomona. We're spending a lot of this money probably at Third Street Graphics, within at least the cans part. We're paying Pomona-based artists, so they'll be spending their money in town. I spend my money in town, so it's like also again that circle coming back, bringing it back to town, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm excited that Tony Joe will hopefully be also in the mix. I know he's got a mural, at least one mural I know in Pomona.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm pretty sure, I hope I inspired you a little bit that as your life unfolds too, you'll get an opportunity to put some public art and get paid for it, right?
Oh, yeah, that's definitely the goal. I do have a couple of murals in town. I've got one on Sheila's Pawn Shop, these a set of wings that I've done, and another near Hamilton Park on the Botanica store.
Oh, yeah.
That me and a couple of friends put together.
And that's right across the street from Hamilton Park. Mm-hmm. Which, if you're listening to this and you have kids and you live in Pomona, It is the newest addition of
Beautiful
parks in Pomona, and it's a wonderful place to bring your children and families. It looks nice. The restaurants are clean, and they have art right across the street. That
We have art. We have a big mural right across the street. They've got art integrated into some of the playground sets there. So it's a really, really nice park, and I'm glad that, from. I don't think that maybe we had something to do with it, but the mural was there before the park got redone.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they decided to keep the mural there and not mess with that. So I'm really, really happy about that.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. There's another one.
I've been working with
that,
Jungle to try and permit that one of these days, but
Yeah. And again, if there's any artists listening out there, the commission has made it fairly easy to get a mural permit where nobody will come in and paint it over as a graffiti abatement. So again, if you're an artist out there and you have a mural or you want to do a mural, check out the city's website, the commission's website. Again, it's like a one-pager. And it's always better to be a little legitimized, right, than to one day come and see your mural totally painted over in that brown or
I'll
paint.
say yes and no.
Yeah.
Because I think in the art world, I appreciate like being legitimized and following the rules and all that, but there is times when it doesn't fit.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
And without hurting anybody or vandalizing one of our beautiful small businesses, sometimes you have to break the rules a little bit. What is it? An unjust law is no law at all.
Yeah, Thomas.
And so I do think that we've gotten to where we are because of a couple things that were done outside the lines that created a little controversy, and then we were able to create policy to work with the parts that folks were uncomfortable with before.
One of the things I think about right now, Josh, and I'm sure both of you guys know about it much more than I do, but I guess in the art world in downtown LA, all those murals that have been put up in those abandoned buildings, right? So that was one of the latest kind of things happening within the art world in LA, at least, right? You got a building that hasn't been occupied or is not doing anything. So how did it all work? Artists found their way into these top floors and just started getting down?
I mean, I would say that it just started with folks having space to put up.
Yeah.
I always think of the old movies and the white whale. When you see a white train, so you got these buildings with all these walls going all the way up.
Yeah.
So I'm sure folks were thinking about it for a while.
Right.
And then, a few started hitting it up, and then it became a thing. And then, of course, the news, everybody got wind of it. And then everybody wanted to hit it up because now it was becoming a statement.
Right.
It wasn't just a place for, to pop a name or a cool piece. Now it was making a statement about the gentrification of downtown and how it was forgetting about the people who had been there and who are still here,
right?
Within the community. So,
well, I certainly hope that Pomona will learn from the history of LA, and that we will always have a thriving art colony and with rent that matches, I suppose as well, because I know a lot of upcoming artists maybe they don't have the big budget, but yet they have the creativity and the skills to add value to the world and the community. So again, I don't know whose job that is, but I really hope that Pomona will always have an art colony with thriving artists and with affordable rent.
Yeah, I know we've had conversations. I won't speak too much of it because I don't know if it's going to completely end up that way. But there is one project coming in on Mission, and a good chunk of it is supposed to be affordable artist housing, specifically for artists. Now what's an artist today? Is it all going to be t-shirt designers, painters? What does that look like? But the idea of how do we ensure that our artists can afford to stay here and still be part of the community? Because right now we still have an arts colony.
Yeah.
But as rents continue to increase, people don't necessarily get more for their art, and so there are a lot of folks who've made careers out of it. But a lot of the artists in the area, I know some who are pool cleaners. I know some who are contractors. There's a lot of folks who have to pay the bills somewhere else.
Car detailers?
Auto detail.
I wasn't going to bring it up since he's retired, but he did my car too. So
he does a great job. All right, Tony.
But yeah, it becomes the hustle of how do you do that. And so what I'd love to see more of is, number one, from the city's perspective, instead of doing these one-off pieces every once in a while for folks, like really thinking about our artists and how do we feed them? Like, how do we create a career? You know, so I remember when we started, all the murals back in the day were like, all right, we'll give you $4,000 for a big, you know, like a giant 30-foot mural, you know, and they would be the artists would do it, but they'd end up being out of pocket. They didn't make any money from that. And so as the cost continues to go up, we want to do graffiti coating on everything.
Oh, yeah.
You know, think about all these things. But then at the end of the day, like, I want an artist to like say, hey, look, I made a good chunk. I paid rent and everything from that mural. And so those are things that we need to do, make sure we're doing it continuous. The other day, someone from staff had brought up like, well, we want to make sure like this new call for art, if someone had already done a call for art last year, that they shouldn't be a part of this. And I was like, no, absolutely not. Like, we have to let the artist be a part of this on a regular basis, you know, and if somebody wants to come in, we have that door open for new folks, but also like, we need arts to survive. You know, that is, I mean, LA is one of the largest like creative economies in the world. And so when we're talking about Pomona, like, well, what does that look like? We don't want folks just going to LA to do that.
Right.
We want that to thrive here.
We want to get them on a metro link and do an art tourism just in Pomona. So
absolutely.
I want to get on a train and just come out of Pomona to rent a bike, you know, or a scooter, or do something and do like a what are they called, GSI, geo mapping, and go spend a little money at a business, have a coffee, look at the art, have a conversation. I mean, that's kind of nice.
Exactly.
That it would unfold that way,
and
right?
I think that's the part where we play that piece, but then also like, how do we collab with like LA County? So like, I sent a couple. I think I sent it to you. If I didn't, sorry.
Yes, you did.
Okay,
I just
good.
got it recently.
But like, they have a $40,000 artist in residency coming in, and so it's teaching as artists are learning how to put these proposals together. Like, there's a lot of money out there, and so if you're doing a residency here, and then you're doing like 6 murals this year, and then you maybe teaching a class, and you know what I mean? Like, so you build a career, and then you get to walk away from that thing you were just sort of doing on the side that you weren't passionate about, and move into a space of like being a passionate artist with an actual career.
Yeah.
And the idea of the homeless artist, the artist that, like, you know what I mean, like, who doesn't have any money and food and whatever, and like, I mean, that exists, but it doesn't have to exist. Like, we can create without the gentrification, without the whole like weird side of fine art and galleries that we see sometimes in New York and LA and some of those spots. Like, without all of that, we can have folks. I mean, I think about like a Angel Once, and so all the work he did moving forward. But now, Bam, his son, who I have one of his first pieces when he was a little kid. I mean, he's still a kid, but like little kid, of his little snails. And like, I love the fact that like he was 9-10 years old during Art Walk, hustling with all these paintings, making money. I think about that with my kids. I have an 18-year-old and a 9-year-old. And I'm like, y'all need to build a career. If you love art, build a career around it. Do it now. There's no reason why you can't sell stuff on Instagram and everywhere else. And so we need to create the fundamentals and the foundation so that artists can like not just beautify the walls, but really like, how do we ensure that part, the storytellers of our community are still around? You think about the ancestors, right?
Right.
The storytellers are why we know what we know about them. And so we quickly can get rid of that by not funding things and not taking care. And so it's not just art, right? It's we are the storytellers. These are the storytellers that are moving our culture, our history, everything forward. And so we have to take care of them. It's so important. It's not the cherry on top after we're done with everything else, like we learned in school. Like, when we're done with math and science, then we'll take a little art class. It is the hardest, you know, everything.
I think a little bit of art history, and I think I learned this from my buddy Oscar. He knows a lot about this part of history, on how Mexico in the early part of the 20th century, is it? They started this really large-scale public art program that like Diego Rivera and some of those artists were a part of. And to think that, again, most of the country were illiterate. So the art communicated the history. It told the stories, right? Mm-hmm. And I think about ancient Egypt, and you can still go to many of the temples of ancient Egypt, and it's the art that continues to tell the story. So every great, civilization or culture that we remember still to this day it seems to be that it's the art that will continue to tell a story.
And we're in a beautiful space now because so for so long, I feel like whether it was street art or quote unquote folk art was like looked down on as not real art. And so when you went to LACMA and you went to these places, that was like one little small spot off to the side. But really, what was Picasso doing? You know, when he does his stuff on the Spanish War, like that was quote unquote folk art. He was telling the story of the time right there that he was in. Mm-hmm. And so you think about these folks who were storytellers, and for some reason that got lost for a while. And we're in a really beautiful space right now. We're funding for folk art, funding for street art. Yeah. The storytellers within the community that was kind of looked at as like not real art, all the things are now being appreciated. And so, you know, we're not there yet, but like it, you know, think about like you as when you're diving into your history and you want to learn more about the ancestors.
Yes.
And all the stuff. It's the art that brought those stories forward. You know, and so that's the parts where you can see these. You can go online and you can find stuff. You can go visit. But even now, you go to the Cheech, and it's like it's not just cool little paintings and sculpture and stuff. These are stories.
Yes.
Every piece on that wall is a story that someone's telling, and so we get to, you know, we're in a different place. I remember when Mocha did the first street art show back in the day at the Geffen. Over in Little Tokyo. That's and it was like, awesome that was spot. Huge. Yeah. And I remember going there and like almost, I was almost in tears, like, you know, it just, because these were folks that I knew from back in the day and had been following, and there was a whole wall of trains, like little trains.
Oh yeah.
That were all done by all these artists. And it was just like, this was in a Mocha. Like this was in Mocha's like gallery. And they even had to sneak a couple guys in who aren't legally allowed to touch paint anymore.
Oh shit.
And so, yeah, they had to sneak a couple guys in to do some pieces before the show was even announced. And so, I mean, you think about to go from that to like where we are today, and that was just, you know, what, 15 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, we're really in a good space right now where there's finally a love and appreciation. Street art's not just looked at as vandalism. People are understanding. I remember talking to the mayor one day about tagging, and he was just like, I say, I can do, he goes, I love graffiti, but, you know, the tagging, I just don't get it. And I was like, yeah, but I said, you put your name on stuff you like? And he goes, like, yeah, like if you know. I was like, you signed for your house, you know what I'm saying? Like when you were little, you had a notebook, you probably wrote your name on it, you have a book, put your name in it. Like, think about it from that concept. The community is putting their name on something they like. And so this idea of like, how do we bring, without the I mean, because I have a heart for the small businesses too, I get that side of it. But like, if we can go to the heart of what's happening, when you talk to the old school like guys who were like, I've talked to some of the guys from the Bronx back in the day who, you know, were part of the beginning of all of this, the B-boy movement. And they're walking over bodies next to burning buildings on their way to school. And so DJing, breakdancing, you know, bombing a white whale, you know what I mean? Like all the different things, like that was a part of them being lifted up, like them finally having a voice, them being able to find beauty and ownership and saying, this is my neighborhood, this is my hood, I love my hood, I love my neighborhood, and this is what I'm gonna do to it. Now maybe not everybody agreed on how they did it, but that's where it came from. And so that's the part that we're finally getting to reconnect to, is the part where like these folks, when you're talking about your at Promise Kids and all that, when they're going to put a wall up, there's a pride. That piece that you guys did over at Kennedy is still up.
Yes, sir.
I mean, the lady in the middle had a mustache for a while, but,
that's right.
But for the most part, like it's still up because it was kids from the neighborhood who did it.
That's right.
And so there's a respect and honor for something that they brought because that was a sense of ownership.
Yes.
And that's when we're seeing folks who do writing and all the different things, that's really where it's coming from, is that space. And so giving space to that, you know, and elevating that and allowing folks to really say like, you know, what is your story? Like where can you connect? And here's some paper, here's some paint, here's some, you know, let's do it.
Wonderful, man.
Yeah.
Community stories. So as we kind of wrap things up, we're coming to the hour right now. My question to the two of you, as the last year has unfolded, you know, well, maybe even coming out of the pandemic, and a lot of this art in public places money has been spent. What are some of your favorite the public art pieces that kind of pop out that have been done within the last couple years?
For me, I like the one that's on the Catalyst Smoke.
Yes.
That place.
And describe it to me.
It's
David Flores.
It's a person on a motorcycle and some really beautiful roses that are like coming out of the back. So
out of the tailpipe of the motorcycle, rather than
Correct.
smoke, it's like flowers, right?
Yep.
It's colorful. It's a
Very cool
David
piece.
Flores again. He's got a few paintings, really nice paintings here in Pomona, in a few different spots. And that was cool. And that was actually not a part of the Art in Public Places monies. That was Catalyst. So they paid the artists themselves, right?
Yeah, there was most people just write the check for 1%, but you actually have the option to just put art on your building.
Yeah.
And so they were one of the few who decided to actually just put art on their building and fund it.
And it looks nice because I remember that little parking lot was full of trash and other things, let's just say. And now, I mean, art brings a certain vibration to a neighborhood, right? To a community, to a business. What about you, Josh? What you've seen all the art come through your way over these past couple of years? Something that stands out to you?
There's a couple. I think the one Jason did that's on the is that Mosaic Family Housing?
Yes.
On Gary. It's a mosaic piece.
It's wonderful.
And it kind of shows like all of Pomona, and there's like an eagle flying over. It's a really dope piece. And most people miss it because you just drive by. So unless you're from the neighborhood and you're walking on the sidewalk, you probably don't notice it too much. That's always been one of my favorites. I love the one that Jelani is. I think he's almost done with it. He worked with Jose on it over at MLK, and
yes.
But knowing like the heart behind and the story behind why that piece was important and why it was important to them to make sure that they got that out there for the community, really means a lot. Like, so I think there's those are the ones that like. I mean, I think we have pieces that are just beautiful.
Yeah.
And nothing wrong with that. That's good too. But there's ones that I know, like, cause either I know the artist or I remember their story when they were telling us, that really connected past just like, I have a cool idea, but like they really thought about like, this is my stamp. This is,
right.
I'm putting my blood, sweat and tears, in this piece. So yeah, there's, I mean, I could probably go on for an hour and a half of all my favorite. Yeah. I got a lot of favorites.
And I like, from what I understand, a couple of basketball courts have been painted. So even incorporated in community sports, an art element is now there where it once was not, right? And the skate park, that was painted. Now, one of the things that I wish we could really deal with, I don't know exactly how. I mean, it's a hard subject, but how do we get the next generation of young people growing up respect public art and not tag on it? That's always been somewhat of a challenge. Unless it's a real good piece of art and people know the artist, usually they'll leave it alone. But I know, like, let's just say at the skate park at Palomares Park, that skate park, which is painted with a nice design by Oscar and his crew, has been tagged on a number of times, right?
Yeah, like
frequently.
weekly. Yeah,
like weekly. So I wonder how we can inspire the next generation to respect public art a little bit more, have deeper appreciation.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a disrespect to public art. I think it goes back to the ownership thing. And so I was talking to Nate, who's running the skateboard program, Nate and Tony, and we were talking about like, while I loved what Oscar and all them did, because like I feel like the neighborhood is spoken because they're tagging it on a regular basis.
Yes.
That like maybe that needs to be a temporary piece. Maybe that's something that needs to change every 3 to 6 months.
Yes.
And find out like who are the folks that want to be engaged and involved in that.
Right.
And so I think some pieces are permanent, and some pieces, folks, and I think there's a part of like I think the grown-up part of me wants to say like, hey, cut that out. Yeah. But then like the little kid, like rebellious artist side of me is like, nah, let's listen to them. Like, right. Well, like asking the why. Why are they doing this? Yeah. And how can we support and bring those folks out? Right. So, I think we're always just growing and adapting and paying attention. And, I think we allow the community to speak. And I think that's the part is when you jump into government or leadership or whatever, I think your first, you've been in leadership a long time. So like this idea that like you show up and it's like I figured it out, this is what we're going to do. But really good leadership is like paying attention.
Yes.
You're always listening. And just because you taught a lesson, today doesn't mean that you might not shift that lesson a year later, because you're always paying attention to where people are at. And so I think that's part of like this conversation is, hey, if we're getting a wall that's tagged on a wall a lot, let's not just buff it or whatever, but like maybe we need to spend some more time and energy in that space.
Yes.
And listen to what's going on, even if it's negative stuff. We got some walls that are communication walls for the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so, but that's, those are still humans that are speaking from a place in their heart. Maybe we don't agree with it and maybe it's dangerous and all the things, but like, what can we do to like get to the heart of where people are at? Thinking folks is at promise as opposed to at risk. Right. You know what I mean? And things like that. And so maybe getting them before they're in probation and all the things to like,
when I think about graffiti, somebody told me at one point that like graffiti was the community newspaper. You could really learn what's going on in a neighborhood by what's on a wall, and through violence prevention work all these years, we knew the hot spots that where things were really going to be popping off. Yeah. People might be killed just by that, who's tagging where. And it's something to kind of notice. But Tony Joe, what you have any thoughts? Anything you want to say about art in Pomona? How do you want the future? How do you think the future is going to unfold? Now you got a child that's I think 11 or 12 years old now.
She's 11. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. 11.
She's an aspiring artist.
She's an aspiring artist.
Arts right here in Pomona.
Right. And I have my two children that are 6 and 8. Josh has his two kids that one's a college and the other one's in high school now. Or
no. Elementary school and college.
Oh, elementary and college.
Yeah, 9 and 18.
And since we all have like an artistic kind of niche to us, we've probably really encouraged art within our kids. So I guess the question I'll ask you is, as you see time unfolding here in Pomona and you have your child, how do you want to envision the future of Pomona through her eyes or her path, I suppose? Having children in Pomona that love art.
Well, I look at all the big murals in Pomona and I just think like, God, I would love to see my daughter doing something like that, myself as well. But some of these full scale whole buildings type of stuff, just that it's here, she sees that the opportunity is there, so I just kind of let her blossom into that.
And also they said, again, not ever gonna see you, but you have a jacket on. You told us a little story called Secret Walls.
Oh, yeah.
So what share a little bit about that idea and how it perhaps inspires youth within our community.
Well, the story kind of goes, I took a class from an artist that we know, Angels Once, who was hosting the class. He was a teacher. I took my daughter to join me on that class. And lo and behold, she was chose to do a battle jam. So one of the artists, Upendo, chose her to be on his team. And it was really neat because this is my daughter's first time kind of going out with dad and doing this little art thing as a father and daughter thing. And lo and behold, she gets chosen to do this really grand thing, this with all these great artists. And so for her, it's just really, really eye-opening in that world that she got to experience, such an awesome opportunity, being her first little exposure. So, and a lot of it came from her mind. They were really interested in the mind of a child. And so that's just really awesome. I think that was a really awesome opportunity for her. And, it's just, it birthed the inspiration and it just continues to grow. So.
And sometimes it takes events like that. Again, an artist coming to a community and saying, hey, let me share with you a vision, and to inspire a whole new generation of kids. Now, I think about your kid. I remember her art being, and I'm talking to Josh right now, her art being in the LA County Fair. And I was impressed by your daughter's art. She's got some talent and skills. And so as a father that are talking to other fathers out there, perhaps, what can a father do or a family do to inspire and nurture the artistic spirit of their kids?
Yeah, I think number one, I think start with my wife and I call it refrigerator, where you just sort of like when you're a little kid and you do something, and so like number one, acknowledge the effort. Put it up on the refrigerator, or just metaphorically, maybe it's not going to fit on the refrigerator, but the idea of like you want to encourage that activity of drawing. So like my 9-year-old does some really cool stuff sometimes, but then other stuff that I'm like, oh, that's cool. But it's like you just encourage it. Like, let's keep getting them sketchbooks. What do you need? Like, and so always encouraging the art. And so with my oldest, they did their first art show at 10.
At 10.
Because we had a gallery.
Oh, yeah.
And so we were like, you want to do a solo show? And funny enough, they're not a photographer, but their first show was photography. And they went around the community and took photos of all these folks from the community, like all these old school artists we're talking about, of just their smile. So we had they had them smile and all of that, and then we did a show of like these little 4x6s of like smiles from the community, and the heart was behind like the colony that people don't know when they come to Art Walk. They don't realize like the community that exists and all the things, and so. You starting with that, and so as their craft got better, there was spaces, and so they started getting shows. Just recently, they were at Watts Towers for a 4-month show, and Jimmy Obias, who used to help with the Aslan show and all that back in the day, he was curating this with his son. His son started the collective, and so he's old school, but like he's got a whole nother generation.
Yeah.
And so brought my kid in and Nikki, and they were the two like youngest artists. Everybody else was a little bit older, and so it's just been really interesting watching the access. But a lot of it was relationships, and the art world is still based on relationships. It's you like you said Angel a little bit, so then it made sense to go to him when you were thinking of a class, and then it was like all that kind of ties forward. And so I think as a parent, it's not enough to like say here's an art class or take something after school, but like get involved, like right. be engaged, figure out like what I think about what kind of access can I use to elevate my kids' work. Not that it's nepotism or anything like that. Like they still got to do the work. You know what I mean? Like they still got to put the stuff forward. But like we know a lot of folks, and so how can we create that access? But it's not always big, crazy stuff. Sometimes it's really neat, little small stuff. Uh-huh. One of their favorite shows they just did, like the Watts Tower thing was a huge deal. That was like Department of Cultural Affairs, like the whole LA County. Like it's a to me it was a big deal. But they had way more fun doing Alley Gallery.
Oh yeah.
And putting up like multiple pieces and selling little prints with Geo, and so you know what I mean. And so like, it's not just about the big opportunities. It's like really just finding like where are the places that they flourish, and ensuring that like for my oldest, it's if I see something come up and it's an open call, I'm like I'll just send it to him. Hey, you might want to put a show in, I'll put a piece in, or new, old, whatever, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
And so it's just always staying encouraged. And it's like, you make their dreams your dreams, if that makes sense. So
yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, fellas, I really appreciate the time that you guys spent with me today in this podcast studio talking about art and culture in Pomona. And I just, I have a lot of hope for the vision. Again, we have kids, so we're going to see the next generation of Pomona and hopefully flourish, in particular in the arts, because it seems to me that the city of Pomona is growing more and more as an art community. Having the say over here, the School of Arts Enterprises, we're actually putting out young adults that have had a high school experience and a junior high experience just with art and enterprise, so it's a whole different direction than I think us as Generation Xers ever had, where, you sit down, you be quiet, you fold your hands, and you don't talk and just listen. Where now we could teach them how to be young entrepreneurs, to have experience in different types of art, and even have art programs outside of the school a day with other community members and places like the DAW. So again, thank you, Josh, art commissioner and lover of art, and community champion. Thank you, Tony Joe, artist, and another art champion here in Pomona that is raising a young daughter that hopefully will also bless our city with some public art one day, with a father and daughter mural. That'd be kind of cool, huh?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
A great vision.
So we hope you enjoyed hanging out with us here at the Positive Pomona Production Studio with Pomona's Promise Network Podcast. Please learn more about the murals within your community, the parks and on the streets and some of these buildings. Take pictures. Go check them out. Explore. And if you are a young and upcoming artist, take the opportunity, have the courage to go to the city of Pomona, to the Art Commission, and to learn more about how you can be an artist that contributes to the landscape of Pomona. So any final thoughts, fellas?
No, just appreciate you.
All right. Well, we'll keep on painting, keep it good up, keep up the good work. Actually, are there, Josh, before we end this, is there anything that's happening within the near future that our commission may be championing? Like I know every year they do the watercolor contest and the chalk art festival and things of that nature. Is there anything on the horizon?
So we just finished the watercolor contest, first year back.
Wonderful.
So yeah, that was amazing. We gave out a bunch of awards the other day at the DA. I think they're still up if people want to see them. And then chalk art festival will be happening again this year, November. It's always the second Saturday of November in the morning, and that gets bigger and bigger every year. That's a huge one. And then outside of that, we're basically right now we're in the middle of a call for art, which is closed at this point, but we'll be working forward to push, I think, 10 projects forward. And then our timeline basically is like August, September, and we'll go into some priority things. So we're looking at possibly some art for the Gary Underpass.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Yay.
finally, I know. And some other things. So those are kind of like, that's a new thing, is we're doing priority one half of the year, and then open art calls the other half of the year.
Now, I drive through Claremont quite often, and I really like their utility box art. They've had a number of artists with different styles hitting up those utility boxes, and I don't open a whole other can of worms. Is there any possibilities on the horizon?
I'll just say we're working on it. Ata's been working on it, and it was funny enough. It was actually written into our art in public places ordinance that we can't do utility boxes.
Oh, bummer.
So we're working around that. We're figuring it out on what that could. Yeah. So it's funny because all these cities are doing that one, and it's something that we actually wrote into our ordinance for some reason. And so it's like. It should be an easy project, but once we figure out the language, then we can start moving them forward, and we have a whole project. Hopefully by the end of the year we'll roll out that'll be separate from all of our other stuff.
Yeah.
Just a kind of like we did the K rails.
Right. Oh, and those are awesome.
During COVID, it'll be something like that where we'll just do these small, quick, temporary projects, fun folks. And so those were great. The artists were made. $600 to $2,000, depending on the size of the K rails and stuff. So it wasn't a ton of money, but it was like cool, quick, like nice projects that they could, still eat.
All right. Well, let's do some shout outs as we bring this podcast to a close. First of all, I'll do the first shout out. Thank you to the Pomona City staff, planning division. We got Ata, we got Jocelyn. Who else do we have that's helping with that project nowadays?
Anita She just got promoted. So
yes, now she's our city manager, but she got started with helping the art commission to move things forward. So we could not do this without city staff on the back end making things happen.
Yeah.
Again, thank you to all the art commissioners. We'll name them all. We got Josh. We have Gio. We have Diane. Name some more.
Vanita.
Of course, Vanita.
Sophia.
Sophia.
And help me. I see your face. This is when ADD is fun.
Oh, man.
Well, anyways, they're all online.
Well, again, for
Love
those
you
who
all. No
listen out there,
disrespect.
civic engagement is very important. So if you're young, we want you to take the opportunity to get involved in a commission, because that is volunteer work, and it's very important for community to get involved. So thank you, our commissioners, for volunteering your time to making sure that we live in a city that's full of art and culture. You guys want to give any other shout outs to any other artists within our community or people really making it happen?
Shout out to Joe Dead.
Joe Dead.
Shout out to
We'll say Gio in the Alley Gallery
Brown
that
Pyramid.
has really Brown Pyramid. Gio in the Alley Gallery. We got Third Street Graphics that came into Second Street and kind of filled the void where the Globe used to be.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Antonio Mejia and his kids, and Henny, the whole family. They're just amazing.
All right.
I always appreciate the ones who they put the murals up, whether or not we have a arts commission. They're gonna do the work either way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. So peace, Pomona. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.